Let's move on to aphids. So I've battled aphids, particularly in my outdoor garden. I was growing in my vegetable garden. I had some beautiful lettuce, some kale, and then my bok choy. And the aphids liked the bok choy. And I don't know if it was because the bok choy was starting to get deficiencies or something. I know, generally speaking, if a plant is weakened, it's going through some sort of deficiencies, it's more prone to getting pests. But my bok choy it was loaded with aphids. I mean, they were burrowed like deep inside the leaves, and this was going to harvest, and I was like, oh, what the heck. Anyways, I've had a bad past experience with them. Talk to us about aphids. What are they? What's their life cycle, et cetera, et cetera?
So aphids are very complicated to talk about. They have a sort of an interesting life cycle. For a lot of them, they tend to be very host specific, so they'll only feed on one or a few related species. Or they sometimes are very generalistic and they'll feed on tons of different ones. The peach aphid is a good example of the latter. I can totally visualize what you're talking about. A lot of times, because they're clonal, so aphids are generally female. There are sometimes males, but usually colonies are clonal females with a live birth clonal offspring. In fact, aphids are born not just mothers, but grandmothers, believe it or not. So that owes to their reproductive capacity. They produce tons of a young, and that's the key to their ability to survive so well. And so those clonal populations, they'll just keep reproducing and reproducing on a plant. And if the plant starts to senesce, or like you mentioned, it might get some sort of nutrient deficiency, they can taste that essentially when they're feeding, and that might stimulate, in addition to like sort of weather patterns changing, other sorts of things like that, that can stimulate them to create a second adult form that has wings. And that winged form is meant to disperse to other plants. And some aphids, they require an alternative host. So they'll feed on like weedy plants or herbaceous plants on one in some seasons, and then they'll switch to like woodier tree-like plants in another case. So not all aphids do this, but that is one other kind of lifestyle. And when they create the winged forms, in that case, they might be going to that alternative host, or they're just trying to seek another host to go to, because the colony is probably well developed at that point. So that's their life cycle, essentially. And there's many things you can use to affect them. We talked about spider mites earlier. I just want to say that you can get biocontrols for them as well. Like for the spider mites, Persimilis is really good. I've often recommended them quite a bit. For aphids, you can use things like Aphidius wasps as well. Aphidius urvi, Aphidius metricari are really common to use, and they parasitize the aphids. You can also get the Aphidoletes aphidomusa, which is a midge, the larvae of which will feed on aphids. And if you're a home grower, you should watch out for things called hoverflies or Syrphidae. So the Syrphidae family are these bright, almost wasp-like colored hoverflies oftentimes. And they're called hoverflies or flower flies because the adults, kind of like a hummingbird, can hover in one place. And you can sometimes find these larvae that can kind of look like caterpillars, kind of bounding up and down your plants looking for aphids to feed on. And one of the things that I have on my YouTube channel are observational footage and clips of hoverflies and beneficial insects and pests as well. So if you're curious about what they can look like, you can check them out on the YouTube channel. But it's very important, if you see a colony of aphids and you see these like worm-like organisms kind of around them, don't kill them, because they're not caterpillars. They're actually going to attack the aphids that you're dealing with. So that's an important thing that I like to talk about.
This clip is brought to you by AC Infinity. Use discount code MrGrow at 15 to save on any of their products.